So the whole idea with Routes of Resistance came about through the general work we do in the organization Shift, Safe Havens Freedom Talks. What we do is that we provide meeting places and we facilitate safe spaces for people in artistic freedom, artists and organizations vested in artistic freedom, to meet and discuss and to learn from each other. And what is important for us is that we do not have a geographic starting point, that we try to sort of elevate our conversation above the limits of the nation states, right? And try to be polyphonic and let ideas flow and the ownership to stay with the people that we work with. So in this case, the idea was to see if we can discuss and elaborate on the notion of artistic freedom from different entry points. So to do that, in our network, we found a number of curators from different parts of the world who in turn would work with artists in that part of the world, in the realm that they were, that they knew well, where they felt at home. So first, we actually spent maybe the first year just researching and discussing. And at our meeting in Mexico City, our Safe Havens conference in Mexico City 2022, we gathered a group of curators that we found really interesting, that had a really interesting background and really interesting networks. So the collaboration between us started with a very nice dinner in the Roma district in Mexico City after the conference. A very open discussion about how can we discuss these matters in a polyphonic way. How can we keep our ownership of our ideas and thoughts and come into this project together and see what comes out of it. Well, all these curators we knew had really interesting networks in their regions and also globally, but they also were profound in their thinking around artistic freedom. They had been working with the topic for quite some time, right, and maybe even felt it and encountered issues regarding artistic freedom and freedom of speech. So from that first gathering, which was very open, it could actually have led to anything, but we decided to start working together as a group. So these 4 curators, the good thing about this was that we had the funding from the idea from the beginning. So gathering people with the funding ready is a very, I can recommend that as a way of working, because it just makes everything so much easier that we actually know exactly what we're able to do together, right? So we pretty much split the funding between the different curators and countries. So each would make their own exhibition with local artists in that region. And then the idea was that in the next step, when they have finished them, totally owning it themselves. And we had a lot of discussions along the way. We met quite often in the beginning, over Zoom, of course. And we had a lot of discussions about how much do we need to agree on? What is it that is ours? If it's polyphonic, what does that mean? Does it mean that we do not interfere at all? And I think in the end, that is what it meant. It meant that we could feel after the conversations that we had a very strong starting point, a sort of a philosophical and ethical starting point that we agreed on. But how to execute it, how to perform the exhibitions, that is something that was really up to each of the curators. And they were all made very, very differently, and also different size and different length. And all brilliant. I wish I had been able to travel around and see all the 4 exhibitions in 4 different countries, but none of us actually could do that. So the next step would be to bring together, and this is something that the group along the way agreed on. So the next step was to come together in one space and negotiate these 4 different exhibitions possibly into one. It was also perfectly fine and okay not to agree, right? So what we did was that we brought parts of the exhibitions to Lund. So Skissernas Museum in Lund was very generous to be part of this and hosted our exhibition. And it really fitted well because it is about artistic processes, right? And this is a constant process. So we came together in Lund with parts of the different exhibitions, and some of it actually, you know, curators actually traveled with it in their luggage and came with it, and some of it was sent and some of it was printed on location. And it became a very beautiful exhibition. Now, one thing we encountered, a curatorial dilemma, was if we meet together, all four of us, and the exhibition is not actually finished during the exhibition period, how can we have an exhibition at the same time as we negotiate the exhibition, right? Because we were sitting together negotiating the four different parts, but at the same time we were inside the actual exhibition. But how can we do that? How can the exhibition, because that is something that is set and finished, how can that be unfinished? So what we did was that we used crates that you use for transporting art. We put them on wheels, so all the art was movable. So we all sat, especially the curators, in the middle, and Gloria, who is one of the artists, but also a workshop leader and a zine maker, she led the group into making a zine together, right, out of parts of the four exhibitions. And while negotiating the exhibition together inside the exhibition, we could actually move the crates around in the space and sort of physically negotiate the parts of the exhibition. And also the curators were the owners, but they were also the representatives of the artists that they had brought into because we couldn't bring in all the artists, right? We brought them through their work. So each curator would represent a number of artists, and to look at what, you know, how these artists would contribute to the whole. So in the end, it became this flexible exhibition that was actually quite beautiful. And also in the last step, which we can see now, the final sort of, if you want to call it, the product that we have on our website. Which is possible to download for each and everyone who wants, and make their own exhibition out of this complex processing that we have made. So the final part consists of the zine, which is foldable, so you make it into a box, or you can also put it on the wall on each side, like as art pieces. It's also an animation with a kind of a poem that has come together through words and sentences that we have all contributed with during the actual workshopping. And of course these interviews are part of it as well. So yeah, so that would be the kind of, so it's still a process, because each and everyone who wants to continue this exhibition, who wants to download it, they can also invite other people, artists to speak, artists to perform, and they can also organize a discussion around it. So it is still a process. It will continue to be a process.